Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Logos Project. This is your host, Dom. And in today's video, I'm joined by my new friend, Josh, from the
Mhm.
Happy Hour.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was kind enough to have me on his show
Mhm.
uh, last week. Was it last week
Mhm.
already?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was last week, yeah.
Yeah, you were doing on the seven deadly sins and their
Mhm.
opposing virtues.
Yeah.
And we talked about greed and generosity. And if you guys want that on the posts section of my YouTube channel.
Mhm.
So definitely go check that out and subscribe to Josh's channel. Sounds like you're doing great stuff over there, Josh. But
Yeah.
since you're
So,
new to the audience, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell
yeah,
us a little bit more about your backstory and all that kind of stuff.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah, so like I said, I'm Josh, I'm the host of the Holy Happy Hour, and, like every person and their mom, like, I started a podcast, just kind of out of, like, pure passion for it. I did never thought that it would maybe be something, and, it's kind of God's really blessing it, but I have a little kind of to back up a little bit about my backstory is I grew up in
Yeah,
the
please.
Baptist church. But I grew up in, like, kind of a status quo Christian family, like, we only went to church because we lived in a town of, like, 2,600 people, and everyone would know if you didn't go to church, and so, kind of the only reason we went, and I got the option, actually, when I became a freshman in high school. My parents said, "You can decide if you wanna go to church or where you wanna go to church," so I obviously, as a freshman
Mm,
in high school, immediately stopped, and so me and my 3 brothers
yeah.
all stopped, and I did get lucky, though, because I stopped, and it wasn't long, then I started. That was the summer, and I started my freshman year of high school and met my cross country team. They were all going to the same church. It was a Protestant church, so kind of like I call them field churches now. And but I was really blessed for that because it at least kept me tethered a little bit to just a faith life
Yeah.
in general.
Faith. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I kept that a little bit. Kind of fell away a tiny bit. All my friends were seniors, and I was a junior. They left, and stayed back. And it wasn't until I got back into college, and then kind of the same thing. Met my college roommate. He wanted to invite me to church, when looked at churches, and wound up at Life Church. And another thing, it was great. At least it kept me tethered to something. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I mean, kind of going to the whole roller coaster thing, I got into my career, went away from the church, and that's where I like really went away. Like I was in my career, I was making good money, I was a personal
Mm,
trainer, I was uh, meeting people that were it's all about vanity, all about partying, all about that kind of stuff, and it was just not a great life. And I think I've always kind of had this thought in my head, like there's got to be more to all of this. And looking back now and reflecting back, I do like a examination of my life story. I can tell that God was in my ear the whole time, just saying, there's more to this, there's more to this." But it wasn't until
mm,
I actually met my wife through one of the gyms I worked at, and we started dating. She invited me to mass, and yeah, I went with her. And my only experience with mass was as a trumpet player, so I just knew, like, I went and played. It was very weird. It seemed like everything was scripted, and that it was just kind of the church Olympics, this stand, sit, kneel. And I just had no idea.
Calisthenics. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had no idea what was going on. So I was just like, whatever, like this is weird. But when I met my wife, and then she took me, she would sit there and was like, "Yeah, so the priest says this because it's, or this is where it's at in the Bible." And she would explain things to me, and then we really hit it off when I was able to say, in the music, anytime they're talking about something or singing about something good, the music will go up, and if it's talking about something bad, the music will go. And I would go down, and like I would explain things like that to her, and she thought that was fascinating. So we kind of hit it off on that kind of stuff. And it wasn't shortly after that I met some people who invited me to OCIA, and I went. And I think that's when God like kind of really revealed, like, it's like I was, like I've been saying, there's more to this. And every OCIA class was just like, I never had a light switch moment. So there was never that kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so true. Like I'm going to become Catholic. But it was like, I didn't have a reason not to become Catholic. It just everything made sense. And um, I like to say I'm not just like a super gullible person. So it's not like I was like just easily
Yeah.
persuaded. I'll believe what anyone tells me. But
Yeah.
I was really blessed with a guy that just walked with me. And I actually moved to Oklahoma City, from Tulsa halfway through, and he was like, "You know what? I want to continue to walk with you. If you're willing, drive back once a week, and we'll go to lunch, and I'll do OSA with you one on one." It's kind of perfect with the topic for today. But he, yeah, did one on one. We walked through it together, and he finally got me to the fork in the road where it's like, this is your decision time. So became Catholic, and then as people say now, they're like, "Man, you became Catholic and jumped off the deep end," because that was 5 years ago, or not even 5 years ago, 5 years ago this Easter. And they're like,
Yeah.
ever since then, I started a business, but I sold the business to go work for the church. Started working for the church. I got into Bible studies, started leading my own Bible study, started this Catholic podcast, and volunteer for stuff. I'm a guest speaker at a few conferences coming up, and everyone's just like, yeah,
Nice.
you kind of just jumped off the deep end. I'm like, yeah, I fell in love with it really fast. But yeah,
That's
so
fantastic.
the short-ish
Yeah.
version of though.
Yeah, no, one thing that I think is important in what you in your story there is that the importance that OCIA plays. It used to be called RCIA, recently was changed to
Yeah,
OCIA. And I guess, just for the sake of the audience, maybe I could capitalize on that. If you're part of a Catholic parish, and if even better, if you're part of an OCIA program, like, please do not underestimate the importance and the effectiveness of the OCIA program, but especially the
yeah.
importance because it's actually very much worthwhile
Mhm.
effort into making the OCIA program something that's well done, right?
Yeah,
An intelligent catechesis, a lived, right, a process, right? It's a
yeah.
initiation into the church, because
Mhm,
all these new converts who are coming, kind of like you, right, and who are kind of smitten by
mhm.
Catholicism. You guys are the future of the church. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of people that were hemorrhaging in the Catholic Church, just like in any
Yeah,
other denomination and religion, quite frankly, in the Western world.
yeah,
However, there are people like you, it seems to me, that are coming back, that are young, that are on fire, that discovered this entire tradition and all
yeah,
this history of beauty, architecture, music, the saints, theology, philosophy, and it's like,
yeah,
wow, you've
yeah,
discovered that field with the treasure buried in it, right?
yeah,
And so it's so important. I just want to get this across. It's so important that we work as parishioners to volunteer to make the OCIA programs the best they can be.
yeah,
So I just wanted to say that,
yeah.
but please continue. That's a
Oh, yeah,
fantastic
absolutely, yeah. Because
story. Yeah.
we, with our OCIA program, our parish is constantly inviting, saying, even if you're Catholic, like, come back, come to the classes and, like, take a look. Here's the list of the classes, everything we're doing each week, so that you can look and say, like, if they're doing the sacraments and you're like, okay, the sacraments of initiation, I'm not 100%, like, I don't know if I'd be able to describe them to somebody. Okay, I'm gonna go attend that class and continue to grow, because it really is a continuously growing process, and OCA is the best place to go and be there. It's not just for people that are becoming Catholic. But then on the other hand too,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that if most parishes like ours, our parish is constantly looking for sponsors. So I'm just like signed up just to be on the list. And it's not even every year, but every now and then they'll call me and like, hey, we got a guy who wants to become Catholic. He doesn't know anybody in Tulsa, or he doesn't have anybody that would sponsor him. And so I'll sign up to sponsor him. Even if I can't make all the classes, I'll just make sure I stay in touch with him and try to get coffee if I don't make the class. But it's definitely worthwhile, because I think I heard one time it's like, for every one person that comes in the church, we have 2 leave or something like that, and it's just, like, kinda
Yeah.
crazy, and I don't know if that's statistics, right? I don't have any data to back that up, but I think I just heard that somewhere.
It definitely rings true, but no, you're right. If you are Catholic, and you just want to learn the faith better, that's also a
Mhm.
good thing to go and to support the catechumens or the candidates, the seekers, as we call them sometimes.
Yeah,
Um, but also, if the program, some places, because there's not much resources, maybe there's something that one can do to make it better.
yeah,
There's a lot of Catholics who know their faith out there, who go to mass on Sunday, but who could probably get more involved. And OCI, I think, is one of those areas, fields of mission that is
yeah,
definitely very important. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
for sure. Yeah, and I think too, it's like to encourage people not to think to themselves like, "Well, Josh has got a podcast and he works for the church and he's the perfect kind of person to sponsor someone or whatever." It's like, no, no, no. We need everybody. We need as many people as we can, like, to be sponsors, just be active, even if it's not a sponsor for OCA. But you are like, you know what? Like, I've been doing this for a while. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding, but I want to continue to grow in my faith. So I'm going to start up a Bible study, or start up some kind of small group, because I think that's the biggest thing, at least in my area, and it may be different other parts. But I feel like in my area, the biggest thing right now is that we're needing more people to be active disciples that are like walking with people in a small setting. No one needs to like start up a podcast like I did or anything like that. But if we do need people to meet with a couple guys like once a week or so, or every other week, and that's where I think the biggest call for the church is. And I think where thriving
Definitely.
parishes have a very good uh, uh, like community like that, and the ones that struggle, I would bet don't have as good of a community like that. Have like good Bible study numbers and stuff like that.
For sure, especially, for us after COVID, everything blew up in a good way. Like,
Mhm.
people were so sick of being isolated that,
Yeah.
we have a young adult group. We call it a young adult group, but some of us aren't so young. I mean, I'm still young, but it really blew up, and
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm very grateful for that. But last time I talked to you, you mentioned the spirituality of the little way.
Mhm.
Of course, Saint Therese of Lisieux being the kind of championing of that.
Yeah.
Tell me more if that's okay about how you encountered this way of
Yeah.
thinking, right? This little way. What appealed to you?
Yeah. So I first of all, I'm really really highly involved with Focus. I'm one of the blessed people. If people don't know what Focus is, a fellowship of Catholic university students. I don't remember if they're changing that or not, but it's missionaries on college campuses. But now they're actually putting them in parishes too. Um, but I got lucky to be involved with them pretty like even like before I became Catholic, and their big thing was when build sinned. And I think when people think of like some of the statistics, like even like the one I just mentioned with the every person that comes into the church, two are leaving. And if that's a stat or if it's three leaving, whatever it is, but like if it does seem like it's like we're actually bleeding members, I think that can be really discouraging to people. And people may think like we need some kind of miraculous, like big, we need another St. Francis Xavier is what we need. Someone go out there and baptize 300,000 people. But truly, I think like what we actually need is people that are willing to walk with other people, people that are willing to invest in other people. But I think where that starts, right? Well, where I know where it starts because St. Therese tells us is it starts in that relationship. And I got to witness it firsthand because when I was at that parish, I didn't know anybody, and I finally had someone invite me to a retreat. Got to know some of the older guys, but then they put a parish focus missionary at the parish, and that guy was like, "Let's go get coffee." We got 1-on-1. He invited us over to his house, and we cooked dinner and stuff. We had him over to our house. We just became really really good friends, and he like intentionally like invited me into walking with them. Like I want to walk with you, not just through Bible study though, like through what we call discipleship, and I want to walk with you um, through this process that will help you to become the best discipler. I guess whatever the word is that you can be, so that you can go out and help evangelize and stuff within the parish in the community as well. And it all started though with that relationship. So in Focus, it's win, build, send, and so they which some people don't like the win word because it kind of sounds salesy, but it's just like winning someone over, like winning that affection. You guys become good friends, and I think all evangelization comes out of relationships. I'm one thing I was thinking about with this when I knew we were doing this stream today. I was thinking about like street evangelizers. Like I knew that was gonna like come up in my talk at some point, or like saying is I feel like there maybe is a place for that. I've never been a big fan of it just because I feel like it starts so much division and starts so much. It kind of people put their walls up really fast, but when you
Yeah,
go that individual route of really investing in someone's life and whether it's a Protestant friend or an atheist friend or whoever it is, you start building this relationship. Now they trust you, and not in a scheming way. That's why I said sometimes it seems like a little like I'm going to trust somebody so that I can sell them this product. But it's when the product you're selling is salvation. I think it's worth it to get to know them, and so they will trust you. And then when they're also won over to what you're selling, they're loving Jesus as well. That's where then you can start to build them up in the knowledge and the faith and their prayer life, in like getting them to the sacraments, building them up so that they
yeah,
have a strong foundation. And then send is the last phase, and send is the like now I want to like send you into the community. I mean, obviously the Saint Therese is the one who kind of really uh, kind of pioneered all this, but it's really Jesus's way and the way he did things. And I actually just did a reflection on my Patreon account recently of I do like gospel reflections daily, and was doing the one where he sent the disciples out, and he sends them out two by two. And he doesn't. He could have covered twice the ground if he would have sent them out one by one, but
it's a
he sent
good
them
point.
out two because he knows the importance of walking together. Like you need those guys. So
Yeah,
I'm part of a Bible study, part of a parish, but I'm part of the most important group is my discipleship group, and it's literally just me and three other guys, and all of those guys are also leading other guys. So I've got my Bible study, but it's really important that I get with those guys too because I can share my struggles with like where am I at with this Protestant guy that's my Bible study that's not quite like coming around to it, or how can I be better for him or something. It's just a great group of guys that we can really come together and reflect on our ministry and our work and our evangelization efforts, to either build up Catholics or to help bring people into the church. And when we do hit those walls or hit those places, we have that place to that small group to walk with and to continue to build in our own faith. So
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, being Christian is not something you do on your own, right?
yeah,
And it's funny because I can't remember exactly where it was and how he said it, but one of the authors I was reading was talking about evangelization. In a sense, being Christian shows you how to truly be human, and being human shows other people something about Christ, right? And so, John Paul the second, Saint John Paul the second, this quote he used a few times, which was, "We
Mhm.
don't impose the faith; we propose the faith." Um,
Mhm.
and so, it's kind of alongside the same lines as what Pope Francis talks about when he mentions the difference between proselytism and evangelization.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people misunderstand that to not proselytize means to not speak about Christ to others. Um, but no, we're supposed to speak about Christ to others, but not as something that is manufactured. Like not something like treating people like a project. And this
Yeah.
did with a friend of mine, with two friends of mine. The first was such a mess, and it backfired and it was miserable. The
Mhm.
second time, I, thanks be to God, realized I really shouldn't be treating people as projects. And so
Mhm.
I actually came to accept that this was a that, what, he's not interested in becoming Catholic, and so I'm not going to try to win him over. I'm just going to be
Mhm.
a good friend to him. And
Yeah.
it turns out he did become Catholic. you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's something about that. It was Father Delubac who talks about, um, you know, uh, being in Christ. Our humanity is revealed, right? What it means to be
Mhm.
a human being is revealed, and good, whole, integral human being becomes something that's possible in Christ. But if
Mhm.
we're good citizens, good human beings, good members of the community, of the city, you might say,
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
people are going to be like, you know what, that person really is flourishing. Why
Mhm.
is it? What makes
Yeah.
him so so full of that kind of sense of purpose, meaning, they appreciate beauty,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff, right? And then, well, if you ask me, well, it's the humanity of God, right, in
Yeah.
Christ, that really is the reason why this path has been opened up for me. And so yeah, so it seems to me that that's something that you can't do on your own, because human beings are um,
Mhm.
they're social animals. They're meant to
Yeah.
be in community. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I took over and started lecturing, but
No, you're good. I like it.
my point though is that I think that you're absolutely right. You're not supposed to go on your own,
Mhm.
kind of door knocking. You're supposed to
Mhm.
be with friends, to live with friends, and to kind of share the identity in Christ, and then just be good members of society and
Yeah.
befriend other human beings. And I think through that, right? And then, of course, if the moment arises, usually I wait till people ask me. If the moment arises, then you tell them, "Well, look, I'm
Mhm.
Catholic, and Catholic
Yeah.
faith is amazing,"
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's my wife just had an awesome story. Actually, literally just happened today. Super cool. But she had a friend that kind of fell away from the faith, got divorced from her husband, and kind of just fell off the wagon in general. So she was Protestant, but her friend, she always just loved her where she was. Like she would not afraid. They had a good enough relationship. She wasn't afraid to say the like truth to her, or say her own opinions on things, her own feelings, or what the Catholic Church teaches. And even if they would disagree, they always had this great respect for each other. And
Mhm.
yeah, out of nowhere, just literally, they haven't talked to maybe 2 years, 3 years. I mean, it was crazy. Just out of nowhere, she texted her and said, "I was just so overwhelmed today. I just really felt God was telling me to reach out to you, and I just really would love to meet up. And it's just, yeah, super cool. Where it's just something that my wife, even though they hadn't talked in a while, just the fact that my wife always there for her, and just continue to be who Jesus would want her to be to her friend, and then just trust the process and continue to pray for her. That you never know when like it's going to come back around, and you always just
Yeah.
keep praying that it does. And unfortunately, there will be those people that don't, but you keep praying that like I really hope that I get the opportunity um to have that impact in her life, or I hope she runs into somebody that will have that impact in her life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's awesome. We have some crazy winter weather coming, but they're going to get together next week, so super excited
Yeah.
about that. But yeah, another thing I was thinking
You
though
know,
too is that Jesus was always like the example for us on like what we should do, in like the two ways like that he always talks about, which is kind of relevant to both of them, or that he does that's relevant to both of this, is that like he himself could have also like done it on his own. Like he could have gone on his own and just been on his own. Like he didn't need other people. I mean, he was fully human, but he was fully God. But he himself went and surrounded himself with men, and obviously he needed to establish the church as well. But like during his mission and stuff,
yeah.
also surrounded himself with men, showing us like this is what you guys should do as well. Have that community with you. Yeah, I just love that he does that, shows that example. But then also I love that it's like someone who is fully God also takes that time to go off and pray, like go off and cry and pray and like and be distraught, showing that fully human side and fully God side, but like still showing as an example. Even like when they show up to another town, he's like, let's go off and pray, and takes them with him. And yeah, just beautiful to see. And it's all about community, and the more you have it and the stronger it gets, I feel like life just gets a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to deal with, and you don't feel so alone when you do
Yeah.
have those struggles. You have those like especially those really deep mortal sins that you're struggling with. If you have a group of friends that you can just open up with and be able to share, like, hey guys, like I just want to be honest with you because I know I can trust you guys. I'm struggling with A or B or like whatever it is. I'm struggling with pornography and I need help. As soon as you can find a
Mhm.
community that you're willing to share like that kind of sin with, or like something like moral with, that they can, that they're not going to shame you or like, oh, try to exclude you from the group or separate themselves, but they're gonna
No,
like walk with you, man. Like the enemy doesn't like that, and it's just so important.
no, I completely agree. I love what you're saying because part of Saint. I was reading. This was years ago. I was reading Saint Therese's A Story of a Soul, and
Mhm.
actually, this is an interesting story. I was actually, because you live in Tulsa. We talked about this last
Yeah,
time. You're about an hour away, if I remember correctly, from Clear Gabby,
yeah,
and
hmm
2 years, a bit less than 2 years, and I remember reading Saint Therese's Story of a Soul in my
hmm
cell, and coming across a passage where she has this analogy of uh, her and another great saint at the bottom of a mountain, and the mountain represents like the mystical ascent to God, right? The ascent of holiness, and
hmm
you have this saint just like with a pickaxe, climbing up the mountain like 10 meters time beats and just incredible, and he heads up towards the top of the mountain, and us little people are at the mountain just the first few feet up, and
hmm
she says, I just get in the elevator. And her point was that God kind of picks me up in his hand and just
uh-huh.
puts me on top. I don't have to do any of the climbing. Now what she was trying to say is and I kept reading, and she was talking about this attitude of trust. There's
Mm.
this childlike attitude of trust. And I remember. Oh, I'm cutting out a little bit. Just a
Yeah, it's
second.
just a little bit.
Okay, I'm good right now.
Yeah, I was catching
Yeah,
everything while you're
okay, don't hesitate to cut me off if I'm unintelligible. Yeah.
saying.
No, but I bring up the story because of Saint Therese, right? And she talked about this idea of, and I remember being in my cell at the monastery and thinking, huh, if only I could figure out this trust thing, I could
Mm,
probably get to the top of the mountain just like Saint Therese through the elevator, right?
yeah.
And so I remember asking the other monk that was in charge of the novices. I was like, Father, Saint Therese says that if you trust, like God's gonna make you super holy. How do you
Mhm.
do that? And he looked at me and he goes, he was a French priest. He goes,
Yeah.
well, you,
Ooh,
and I was like, well, right, you do. He goes, you just trust. And so I was very dissatisfied with the answer. Can you
we
still
we
hear
may
me?
have missed
Am
we
I
may have
cutting out?
missed the as soon as you said he said, and then it cut off, and I'm like, oh, come on.
Oh my gosh. Here, let me switch my internet real quick. Sorry about this.
Yeah, you're good.
Uh,
Check.
okay. What about now?
Sounds good so far. We have to go back to what he said. He said
Okay.
something.
Yeah, so I asked, "Hey, Father, so, how do you trust? What's this thing,
Mhm,
you do? How do you do it?" And
mhm.
he was a French priest, and he goes in his thick accent, he goes, "Well, you see, you just trust, that's it." And I remember thinking, "Well,
Mm.
right, well, how do you do that?" He just looks at me and he goes, "You trust."
Yeah.
And I was, frustrated with that answer,
Yeah.
and I feel like, I feel like I'm starting to understand what he means. Basically, it's not about something that you do, like you
Mhm.
get this secret cheat code in the video game to get to a
Yeah.
level. It's
Mhm.
actually just learning to kind of live in the moment and to just kind of basically believe that God will take care of things. And the way you do that is that you don't rely on yourself. And in other words,
Yeah.
it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is you don't go about it alone, but in
Yeah.
community. So the
Yeah.
conclusion I reached like years later was the way I trust in God is by relying on other people
Mhm.
and not relying on myself. That's
Yeah.
kind of my practical way of trying to do that. And that goes exactly to what you were saying about, dealing with, sins or struggles or issues or what have you. If you're doing it on your own, I mean, you're screwed. That's not going to
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah.
You can't climb that mountain.
Yeah, I read some one time. I can't remember if it was like a saying or something, and I'm sure a lot of people have said it, but yeah, the mentioning like that's what Satan wants. Like he wants you alone. Like he wants you by yourself. It's if he can get you by yourself and isolated, then he can mess with your mind and play with you. And yeah, it's never good.
No, absolutely. And there's something about that kind of uh, Teresian trust, is what I'd call it, I guess,
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
is exactly the essence of her little way, which is
yeah,
to really, to have the kind of trust of a child that God will take care of this, and to not rely on yourself, and that pride to rely on yourself. And I feel like if we do that, if we rely on our friends, if we rely on others, if we rely on God, then He can, you know, zap us up to the mountain, and we don't
yeah,
have to worry about that. All we got
yeah,
to worry about is not relying on ourselves.
yeah,
I think that's a good spiritual principle.
yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we
oh,
even
and
have. Oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, I just wanted I forgot because of all the tech issues, what I was getting at with this, and I finally
Uh,
remembered. It was when you talked about, um, evangelization.
mhm.
Oftentimes, a spirit of trust involves accepting the fact that you're not going to be able to, in a debate with a friend, a friendly debate, which happens a
Mhm.
lot, you're not gonna be able to convince them. But what you could do is plant those seeds that God
Mhm.
will use later to change their
Yeah,
lives.
yeah, yeah,
And so that ceases to become a kind of project that you have to control, and it becomes
yeah,
a trusting attitude of being an instrument in God's providence.
yeah.
To me, that's
Mhm.
so much more fruitful.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'll shut
yeah,
up now. Go ahead,
yeah,
please.
and I heard, so I'm super blessed, and I know a lot of people probably know Carlo Broussard, and he moved here to Tulsa. Me and him have just struck up amazing friendship, and it's been cool to talk to him. But he always tells me it's like, especially when starting this channel. I was talking to him recently about possibly hosting debates on my channel. I'm not too 100% sure. Not me. I'd just be the host and bring people on.
Nice. Yeah.
But he's like, yeah, when it comes to that stuff, just remember, like, if you ever do want to get into it, which you should, he's encouraging me to, but he said, just remember, like, debates are good for that exactly, like planting seeds and doing stuff like that. But you're never gonna hardly ever. I guess you can't say never, but you're never gonna convince somebody in that one sit down, that 1 hour
Yeah.
coffee that you get with them. And that kind of goes back to like it's part of the relationship, and you shouldn't want to like be like, okay, what you don't get it, I'm done. It should be more of a like, okay, like I kind of get where your stuff's coming from. If I send you some stuff, will you read, or will you watch this video, whatever? Continue to invest in them, and you just don't want to
Yeah.
lose that relationship. It's just like keep that going, because you're not going to convince someone overnight, most likely.
Yeah.
Like I would say I was like 4 months in or so, and he was kind of like, "How are you feeling?" I was like, "I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. Everything so far makes a lot of sense," but I wasn't necessarily ready to make the jump yet by any means, and so it took
Mhm.
until about the very end until I was like, "Yeah, I want to do this," and so
No,
that's what
yeah.
I'm trying to just be excited. And it's changed my mindset too when I talk to my Protestant friends. Like I've got a couple Protestant friends that are so on fire for Jesus. They lead their own Bible studies. They pray together at night, and it is awesome. Like I should be so happy for them. I should want them also to have know and experience the fullness of the church and fullness of the truth. And I still want them to be Catholic, and they know that.
Yeah, of
But
course. And
but
they
I
should
know
want you to become, the yeah, Protestant,
yeah.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
which is interesting because they don't. They actually very
Oh,
respect and like that I'm
okay,
Catholic, and they're like, "Yeah, we love
okay.
that," when they just kind of believe in the whole, like it's kinda, I don't know if you saw the John Crist and Matt Fradd interview, and John Crist was like, "This is the first time having a Catholic on the show." It's like, "I'm more of like evangelical." It's like, "But it's kinda same business, just different wings. Would you say that?" And Matt Fradd goes, "Nope, I wouldn't say that." So, it's the funniest. A comedian
That's funny.
and trying to make pop culture jokes and stuff the whole time, and Matt Fradd's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, just keeping that relationship and going. But these Protestant friends of ours just on fire, and it's so great. But
Yeah,
they're willing to have those conversations with us because we're not big on they're not gonna yell at us. We're not gonna yell at them. If they
yeah,
disagree, I remember where I was going with this. When they disagree, I think this is the best approach to plant questions in those people's heads is like through I
yep,
think what's called the Socratic approach. It's like through questions. Like if they're the ones that think the Catholic faith that you're saying the Catholic faith is true and they're like, no, it's not, then it's
yeah,
like the burden of proof's on them, not you. And so it's like flip it and again, not as like you're trying to like, gotcha. But like don't let them just fire off questions at you and you feel like I'm answering all these, but like also get their opinion. And so I used to own a
yeah,
business where I couldn't be super political or I mean, if I could be, I let people know I was Catholic, but I didn't want to be like I wasn't going to tell any Protestants that they needed to become Catholic because then they wouldn't come to my business anymore. But I would plant questions all the time, and so
yeah,
talking about the Eucharist, it's like, yeah, it's
yeah,
like, what do you get out of John 6? Like, what do you think he means? And it's like, yeah, I
mhm,
think it's just mean it's symbolic. Like he was just saying this is what it was, and he was saying it's my body, and you should eat of it. Just meaning like you guys should get together, you guys should whatever you should like do it. It's a symbolic. Like, why do you think people left? Like, that's the one that's what gets me. Why do you think people left? Like, and then he
mhm,
turns to the disciples too, and he's like, "Are you gonna leave as well?" Like, he seemed very frustrated at this point. And it's like
yeah,
just planning questions like that. So it's like, and this I think it's the Protestant thing. Like, how would I answer that question? Like, and then
yeah,
but because they'll get to a point where it's like either they're gonna just stick with their ways. I don't know how to answer that question, but it's symbolic. I think it's
yeah,
symbolic.
yeah,
Or they're going to be like, "Man, actually, that's a good question. Maybe I'll ask my pastor." And
yeah,
and if they can't get a satisfied answer, hopefully that's when you just encourage them to seek out the truth. And we all know if you seek out the truth, you'll eventually find yourself in the Catholic Church or running into a wall that's called pride, and that's just within yourself. So, yeah,
yeah. No, I mean, a lot of my friends here at my local parish will tell you that I thrive in circumstances where I'm with either Protestants, agnostics, or atheists.
oh yeah,
Um,
mhm,
there's just something about talking with non-Catholics that gets me going. Like I
yeah,
love it, right?
yeah,
And it always becomes, a really fantastic discussion about meaning, about religion,
yeah,
about all these kinds of existential questions, right?
mhm,
Um, but at the same time, like I really make it, I make an effort. I don't always succeed at this, but I try to make it an effort not to view evangelization as like, an activity that purely involves argumentation and winning arguments and
mhm,
like amassing converts. A
yeah,
lot of some people in my parish make fun of me for this because I've been the sponsor of a few converts, Protestant converts,
mhm,
for their coming into the church, and they're telling me, how many you got this year, Dom, right? But it's obviously a joke. The
Yeah.
thing is, like, if evangelization is purely this like argument game, like it
Mhm.
really makes it disembodied. Like it's really about yeah, it's very abstract and computational almost,
Yeah.
so I thrive in circles where I'm talking to non-Catholics because I'm gonna be honest with you, I always walk away having learned something every
Yeah.
single time. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know of a single time, I really can't think of one, where I've
Mhm.
talked to an atheist, an agnostic, or a Protestant, where I did not walk away, even someone who's, like, doesn't really care about their faith, like,
Yeah.
just kinda getting to know what makes them tick. I
Yeah.
always walk away having learned something.
Yeah.
And you know what? What I've realized is that when you make that clear,
Mhm.
that really interests the person you're talking to. The fact that
Yeah.
you're here to learn. You're the one here to learn, not
Yeah.
to tell them what to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're here to learn, but also to show that you're interested in what's true and that this
Yeah.
conversation can first of all lead to a fun friendship. You can come
Yeah.
join our, we have like we call it the Catholic frat house where we have
Yeah. Yeah.
bonfires and cigars and stuff, right?
Nice.
Like there's never any pressure. And I'll tell you what, that's in my experience, right? That has
Mhm.
led to a lot of converts. Ironically,
Yeah.
ironically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. It's so interesting because they end up wanting, like, I think they end up wanting what you have. Like they eventually realize, like, man, this guy's so joyful and he's so happy, and the questions he's so intentional because you were like being genuine about like wanting to get to know them. I actually recently invited Alex O'Connor on my show because I don't think he'll respond.
That's the atheist guy, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. But I put in the email like, I'm a Catholic podcast guy. I love following Trent Horn. I'm good friends with one of his good friends. So basically best friends with Trent Horn. No, I'm just kidding. But I said, but I'd love to have you on the show because, and I said basically kind of what the words you used just now is because I'm so fascinated with how you think.
mhm.
I don't think like I'm not well, I mean, God can use anybody for anything, but I don't think I've seen him debate Trent Horn. I've seen him debate other people. I don't think I would be the one to convert him, but I would be very interested to think like how he thinks. And he like one he brings up. It's a great point. Actually, I asked Carlo Broussard the other night. I was like, "What do you think about this?" And I said, Alex O'Connor said he would become a Christian if someone could answer this question sufficiently to him. Now, I don't know if anyone can actually answer sufficiently to him because I think again, there's a little bit of I think pride standing in the way. But he said, if the God was all loving, why would he allow things to happen like a tree fall in the wild, land on a deer, and it's stuck with broken legs and agony and pain just to die from starvation or bleeding to death? Why would all loving God let that happen? And so it's such an interesting, weird question that that your everyday Catholic person
Yeah.
just like it's like what? Yeah, it's like what I have never even thought about that. I don't even know how I'd answer that. It takes you a second to
Yeah.
think about it, but he typically brings that up in all his debates, and yeah, it's just super interesting. Not to like throw that out there as like, what do you think? But it is
No, yeah.
really yeah. They think like that, and I think the reason we become so interested and like have great conversations, learn something from them, is because I feel like the difference between having a conversation with an atheist, agnostic, or a Protestant that's really on fire for their faith, and then having a conversation with Joe and Karen, who've been going to the parish for 54 years and are there every Sunday at 8 a.m. sitting in the same seats, but that's all they do, nothing else, is that one of those parties is actually seeking out the truth and actually like doing something. But the other side, the Joe and Karen are just checking a box. Like I went to Sunday Mass, like I'm
Yeah.
Catholic, but they're just checking the boxes. And we run into older people at our parish all the time. We got a very vibrant young families, like dads between 30 and 38 that are super on fire for their faith. And all these
Nice.
old guys in the parish are taking it so like they're like, "Man, I wish I was like you when I was your guys' age." And a lot of them
Yeah.
don't realize they're a lot smarter than they think, and they know the faith better than they think. And so now we're just encouraging them. It's like, yeah, like get out there now because there's a lot of older guys in there in the parish
Yeah.
that aren't like you guys, and so you guys need to get out there too. So yeah.
No, for sure. No, I don't remember again the exact quote, but Pope Benedict once said something like, if faith in the logos or faith in Christ, right, logos, the meaning of all things,
Mhm.
if this is true, right, then we have nothing to fear, right?
Mm.
There's no um, conversation area cultural, literary, philosophical area that
Mhm.
we need to be afraid of. And this
Yeah.
is something that I think that a strong faith comes with the ability, I think, to actually listen to atheists, to listen to agnostics, to listen to Buddhists, to listen to Hindus,
Mhm.
Muslims. Like if faith in the logos is true, right, then
Mhm.
there's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, it should kind of give us an impetus. And
Yeah.
I often talk about this one book I read by Henry de Lubac called "The Drama of Atheistic Humanism." It's a very German sounding title, right? But
Yeah.
it's written in French. Um, but it's one of the most fantastic books I've ever read, where he talks about all of these atheists. He has a beautiful section on Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche,
Mhm.
and he talks about Auguste Comte, this French kind of atheist guy. He talks about, of course, Marx. Um, who else does he talk about? Feuerbach. It's been a while since I've read it, but
Mhm.
well, actually, it's only been a few months. But there's just I remember reading, for example, there's a section on Marx.
Mhm.
That he begins by explaining how Marx thinks, and I'm thinking,
Mhm.
wow, Marx is actually a genius. Like
Mhm.
Karl Marx is an incredibly perspicacious like thinker.
Mhm.
But then de Lubac goes on to respond to Marx through
Mhm.
the tradition, and it's one of the some of the most stunning stuff I've ever read. I remember almost like weeping at
Yeah.
how beautiful like the Lubach's response was. And Nietzsche, I absolutely love Nietzsche because of his brutal honesty. This is why I
Mhm.
like talking to non-Catholics if they're honest, or
Yeah.
try to get them more honest, right? When I talk to Protestants, I'm like, go back to the reformers, be more Protestant, right?
Yeah.
And because only then can we have a genuine conversation, it seems to me, if we go
Yeah.
back to like the great thinkers of one's tradition. And
Mhm.
anyway, so with Nietzsche, Nietzsche kind of lays out his case. And sorry for, I'll shut up in just a second, but
No, you're good.
Nietzsche lays out his case of Christianity being a morality of resentment, right?
Mhm.
Which is the weak were resentful of the powerful. And so what they did through the historical line of the Old Testament culminating in Christianity, there's this
Mhm.
elevation of the weak and the
Yeah.
poor, right? And this judgment on the powerful and the rich. And so
Mhm.
Nietzsche says a whole morality is elaborated here based on this fundamental resentment that Christ embodies in a certain sense.
Mhm.
And so he wants to, declare the death of God by choosing against God and for man and for the power of man. Because by believing in God, man weakens himself and
Mhm.
worships something abstracted, which divides him and alienates him. There's all this stuff about it. It's quite brilliant. But
Yeah.
de Lubac goes on to show that Nietzsche is profoundly resentful of Christ, and he
Mhm.
goes on to show how resentment characterizes the entire thought of Nietzsche. And
Mhm.
he kind of concludes by quoting Nietzsche against Nietzsche and showing, and he even starts to pity Nietzsche, saying, poor Nietzsche, right?
Mhm.
Who was tormented by Christ, right? He
Yeah.
called himself the Antichrist, right? And he set up this choice between Dionysius or the Nazarene. We have to choose. What I love about Nietzsche, and I'll shut up. What I love about Nietzsche is that he was not critical of simple believers, but he
Mhm.
was extremely critical of liberal atheists. He said you can't have all these liberal values without the Nazarene. You have to
Mhm.
choose between Dionysius and the Nazarene, and he chose Dionysius, and he chose the idea that man is God, right,
Mhm.
and God is dead. Anyway, so
Yeah.
and so in other words, I think that really, if what Pope Benedict said is true, if faith
Mhm.
in the Logos is the meaning of all things and its reality, then we really have nothing to fear at all. Like we can talk to Protestants, atheists, agnostics,
Mhm.
anyone, right? And if we don't have answers, well, again, like those people who we're talking to, what they do is they raise questions that we
Yeah.
thought we didn't have, that
Yeah.
we can then go ahead and look into, and then our faith is strengthened.
Yeah.
So I'll shut
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
No, yeah, and that's the other part of, like, the best thing you could have for these conversations is, like, a genuine interest in the person. actually listening to them and like having that because as soon as you can set that basis where they're like, okay, this person's actually genuinely interested. I like this. They're not just
Yeah.
yelling at me for what I believe. Um, and then I literally just spaced on the second one I was gonna say. What'd you just say? What was the last thing you just said?
Um, yeah, we have nothing to fear if
Oh,
this is
oh, oh.
true.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I remember. Yeah. And the second thing is knowing that you don't have to go into these conversations with that like all the knowledge and all the answers because the
Yeah.
second thing that gives you just the most credibility ever is when you're able to say, like, "That's a great question. I actually don't know the best way to answer that, but I'll find out and I'll get back to you." Like, or I'll send you something like catholicanswers.com. Best like great place to find quick answers to
Yeah.
things. You should always do your own research yourself too, but yeah, but I think those are the two things that someone would be like, "Wow, that's awesome that they didn't just try to make
Yeah.
something up
It
or pull something out of their butt." They just like, no, they really were like, "No, like let me go back and find it." And then when you do that research yourself and you take that time that night to like, "Okay, I'm gonna look this up. I need to find a good answer." It's gonna be ingrained in your brain for a while, unless you're like me and you just forget things pretty quick. But it is gonna be ingrained in your brain for a while. I feel like that's where the knowledge comes. Like, "Oh yeah, I do know the answer to this now because somebody asked me that last year and I didn't know the answer and I had to go look it up, but now I know it." And then someone asks you again, "Oh, I don't know that answer. Let me go look." And so there were
dude,
times where the great apologists
yeah.
also did not know the answers, and that's why they have all these degrees and they went and studied all these things so that they would have the answers. And yeah,
Yeah. Dude, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, most of what I learned, apologetics wise, has been from not having answers and saying to
yeah,
friends, let me look into that. I'll be right back. All right. And
yeah,
and like I said, so in a conversation, first of all, you learn from them, right? From what makes
mhm,
them tick. But then you also
yeah,
learn from what you don't know because then you go and look into it, at least to a certain
yeah,
degree, right?
yeah,
So it's always fruitful to engage with non-Catholics, and we should always
yeah,
be doing it as Catholics. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for the most part too, if you run into like a hardcore atheist, like yeah, if you're not well catechized, like don't invite Alex O'Connor to debate you or something. But like if you are
Yeah.
like going to church and you're going to mass and you're going to a Bible study and stuff like that, don't be afraid to invite somebody into that. And especially knowing like this is just another person, you go to work, like there's a great chance that they're not necessarily going to come at you and be this like well-formed, like thought out atheist or Protestant or anything. They may also have all the same questions, or maybe they don't. They have the questions, but they're not kind of like I was, like
Yeah.
in my story. Like I was, I think I had a question of like, there's got to be more, but I wasn't seeking it out. I think a lot of people are doing that nowadays. Is like they have questions, they're just not seeking it out. And if you're willing to
Yeah.
go, I mean, I think what Paul says in First Corinthians is like, I didn't come to you of great knowledge, but just of great faith. I don't know, like it's not a word for it, but he like
Yeah.
I love that he kind of throws that in there of like I didn't when I came to you guys like I wasn't of great knowledge and stuff. I was just like, but I had faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. And
Oh man, you just made me think of something. Because we're
mm,
talking about Saint Therese, right? Saint
yeah,
Therese, like she didn't really have like, I mean, she didn't have at all a like a academic education. She had no degrees. She did not go to college or anything like that.
yeah,
In fact, she joined the convent extremely young.
yeah, like
And
15, 16.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact age, but that sounds right. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, she had to go to Rome to beg the Pope to to let her to make the superiors let her in.
It's
Um,
nuts.
no, but what's funny is that this very simple, non-educated girl, right? Um, uh, just through praying and acts of charity and that paradigmatic trust that we talked about, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Just, letting go of her self-will, of self-reliance, and relying on God and relying on others, right?
mhm,
And these acts of love, and yeah, that little way of the little things,
yeah,
uh, she became so in tune with the logic of love, right,
mhm,
that her diary
mhm.
was the occasion for her declaration as a doctor of the church.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
insane.
yeah. It's so crazy, and it's cool to see that she truly was like so satisfied and to be in that convent and just be spending time praying with Jesus every single day, all day. And I
Mm.
think I read something, and this story, I love it, that, like, after she died, the other sisters, nuns, whatever, the nuns were, asked to, like, write her eulogy or whatever, and one of them, I think, was quoted actually saying, like, "We don't know what to write. She didn't do much." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"That is so awesome." Like, I would hate to be the person that said that, after she got canonized, but obviously, maybe that was the case, though, that it didn't seem like she was doing much until they discovered her diary and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, wow. Like, this is, like, amazing. This is, worth canonizing her
Yeah.
as a saint," and yeah.
Not only that, but like in before he was Pope, Pope Benedict actually insinuated in a passage that um, I don't think he says it explicitly. I think someone else says it explicitly, but that Therese could be considered as the perfect foil, like the perfect
Mm,
opposite of Friedrich Nietzsche himself, which is
mm,
completely crazy because Nietzsche is like this like really educated, brilliant philosopher.
yeah,
Therese is this simple, very emotional young girl,
yeah,
right? And she is kind of propped up as the perfect opposite of this great atheist, or infamous or famous atheist, and this I almost forgot. There's a story where they actually found the records of a hotel where
mhm,
Nietzsche had stayed the night. Um,
mm.
and in the records was also found the names of Mr. and Mrs. Martin and their daughter, it says,
Oh, nice,
and
yeah.
their daughter Therese, right?
Mhm.
And so what that means is that at one of the at one night at this hotel, Nietzsche and Therese were there at the same time.
Mm,
So you can just imagine,
yeah,
Mr. Nietzsche with his long mustache and
yeah,
his brooding kind of composure and demeanor,
mhm,
walking into the elevator, like stroking his mustache and being a little gloomy. And then little Therese looking up at him saying, "Bonjour,
yeah,
monsieur," how you doing?
yeah,
And they're going up this elevator, and there they are, Therese, little Therese,
yeah,
and brooding Nietzsche. And to
yeah,
me, that image is so powerful as to what
yeah,
Christianity really is. So
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, no, it's always amazing to think, and speaking of the parents, I every time I get, like, I will for the rest of my life, like, always plug this, even if it is not relevant at all, which I guess you could argue it is, but I started reading Story of a Soul when I, like, was 6 months into becoming Catholic, and I was just like, "This is okay, this is way over my head." So I stopped. I didn't read it.
Mhm.
But then, like, a couple Lents later, me and my wife are, like, 3 years in, we're like, we wanted to do a book together, and we did The Extraordinary Parents of Saint Therese, and it, to
Mm.
this day, was the best book we've ever read for our marriage, and it's super cool because it's a book written about them, and then, like, it'll say, "In a letter, Saint Zelly wrote this," and then it's the letter. Like, it's the actual letter translated in English, and so just talking about all
Wow.
these things. They spend a lot of time away from each other, but they have this amazing story of just great faith and trust. I mean, they lost, like, just as much, children as they had, some of them after
Yeah.
birth, like, 1 years old, so a lot during miscarriages, and so but it's just a awesome book for, I think all of their
I'm
it's
gonna
like
have to
all
look that up. Yeah.
yeah, it's like almost all their parents or all their, family, I think, are either canonized saints or on their way or something, but
All the
no, it's
sisters
great.
were Carmelites. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was gonna say something I forgot. Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say I relate to you. That was the exact same experience for me. The first time I read Story of a Soul, I put it down.
mhm,
The main reason for me was because I don't want to sound irreverent, but I was quite frankly just annoyed at Therese. I remember thinking like she was way too emotional, was way
yeah,
too girly, and I was like
mhm,
frustrated with her. Like I'm like, get over yourself, stop crying all the time. And so,
yeah,
I love Saint Therese, so please don't smite me down with your roses. But, uh, I put it down. I couldn't do it. It just wasn't for me. And
yeah,
it was at the monastery where I picked it back up, and it was an
mhm,
entirely different reading.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so that the same
And I think
experience for me.
that's completely okay, so if anyone's listening and they're like, "Man, I've done that before." I
Yeah.
picked up a book, Imitation of Christ, that's another one. I read that one the literally the second day I was Catholic, and I was like, "This I
Mm.
don't even understand this." And I'm reading it
Yeah.
now, and I'm reading it differently because I was just trying to go through it, like, read it like a normal book, and I'm like, "This is so weird." Like, what? It's not, like, written like, it's, like, literally each paragraph is numbered, and it's, like, sectioned off. I'm like, "This isn't like a bo" I thought it was gonna be some kind of, like regular book of like how you can imitate Christ better, but it's like, no, it's sort of sectioned off. It's like actually relate it more to like the catechism. But now, like I read it, and I'll read a couple sections at a time. And a priest of ours, Father Elkin at Christ the King, said, "I read books to understand them, not to finish them." So he says some books are meant to be read like that. And so I took that to heart, and I took Imitation of Christ, and I'm like halfway through, and I've been reading it for like 4 months. But it's because of what I'll do is I'll read a section, maybe 2 sections, and then I'll like during my prayer time, and I'll pray with that section. And sometimes they're super relatable, so I'll just really just sit with that section for the whole day. Sometimes it's like there's other sections in there on like life of cloistered life, and like being a great monk and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, I can read this and just but it can be relative. But I'm gonna move on to the next stuff. But it's been great. It's like I think there are times where you'll pick up a book and it's like I don't know, like it's kind of going over my head and everything, and I think it's completely okay to put it down. Don't like cross it off your list, but just move it down your list and pick up something else that's maybe hitting more home with you, because
they can relate to more.
Maybe a different season because I just recently kind of been feeling really convicted to be more of like an active disciple. Like it's been over the last 6 to 8 months. Probably, I mean, honestly, about the time I started this podcast, and I told myself like I want to become more knowledgeable. I want to be more like Carlo Broussard and just be quoting scriptures and knowing all these stories of saints and all this stuff. And so I picked up Imitation of Christ, and that was the first thing I wanted to read. But I knew in sections, and one of the first sections you read, it talks about like don't just be knowledgeable for the knowledge. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna put this down. And so I like stopped reading right there, and I just really read and I went to my consecration book I'm doing, and it talked about like all the saints sought silence. Like they all were looking for silence. That's what God speaks to you in the silence. And so after reading that, this was like a Sunday where the kids were napping and my wife was gone. I was like, you know what? Like, okay, the silence, and it's telling me don't just be knowledgeable for knowledge. And I was like, okay. So I just listened to God. I put both books down, made coffee, and went and just sat on my porch, left my phone inside, and just sat there and like was just observing like birds chirping, and like it was really nice day, and it was awesome. It was like I thought I was going to sit there and get like a good little study in for the next hour, and I ended up just sitting on my porch for maybe like 30-45 minutes and really just listening to what like I feel like God's telling me to do at the time. And it was not to read Imitation of Christ, but it was just hey, just sit with me for a little bit. So it felt so restful. I think we all need that.
No, that reminds me a bit of St. Francis of Assisi. I mean, he was trying to renew the church during his time, and the Franciscans at the beginning, and you see this in St. Bonaventure later on, they're much more critical of an overly academic life. Like St. Francis, would basically the main idea was that we shouldn't be like academic theologians. Our life should be a theology, right? The way we live, right? The spiritual way of St. Francis is meant to be a lived theology, which is prayer, really, and also feeding and the hungry and clothing the naked, and giving to the poor. And it seems to me that, I mean, you definitely. I think who was it? Well, there was someone who said that the real theologians pray, which means that those theologians who don't pray are actually not real theologians. If you think about it, the word theology, theos logos, means God, word, right? It means to speak to God or speak about God, but also the real theologians, in a certain sense, are the saints. But I mean, it seems to me that if you have just the life of the mind apart from prayer and good works, I don't know. I think it's a bit hypocritical, and ultimately, anyone who studies theology is going to be a bit hypocritical because we're all sinners. But if you're not making an effort to supply what you're studying, even if it's like apologetics as a layperson in the parish trying to be a good disciple and evangelist, if you're not supplying that with prayer and like actual friendship, love, giving of yourself, I mean, that can become very pharisaical very quickly. And I know I've been guilty of that quite a bit, especially in the beginning when I was evangelizing, quote unquote. I would treat other people, like I said, well, not that many times. I did it a few times. I would treat people like a project, and I would try to tell them, have you read this book? Have you heard of this point in history? How do you not know that? And then I would win the argument, try to at least, and I don't know. I feel like that's not good.
I had when I had Carlo Broussard on the very first time, I told him, I was like, I want to have you on. You're a Catholic Answers apologist, and you debate people for a living and answer questions. But I want to have you on to talk about your
Mhm.
prayer life. And he was like, "Oh, wow, like yeah, that'd be awesome. Like no one ever asked me to do that."
Wow, yeah.
But we did talk about apologetics and how it's super important. But
Yeah.
we made the distinction of like proving someone proving someone wrong for their benefit versus proving someone wrong for your benefit of like, yeah, I won that argument. It's like you can win the argument and they could finally not even concede, but like realize they're wrong. But it's like they still have to accept your premise too. And if you cause them to build up a wall and it's just like, wow,
Yeah.
I just convince them that like, what I don't even whatever.
That
Like, I just
backfired.
convince them that they're
Yeah.
wrong. Like, it's just like that doesn't necessarily mean that they agree with your right or they want to be part of your right. Maybe they don't want anything to do with your right
Yeah.
because of how you went about it. And so, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting conversation. But yeah,
No, for sure, for sure.
hmm
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't praise Saint Therese enough.
yeah,
Like she's really is the saint for everyone. Like she's the saint for, um, yeah, just for people who like have all these like chores that they need to do, like everyday chores.
yeah,
Especially, I'm thinking, for example, mothers who are at home, for example, or just people who have jobs that are a bit, how to put it, some jobs that can be a bit demeaning in our economy, but people who have everyday things to do, like if they turn to Saint Therese, devotion to Saint Therese, reading some of her stuff, and becoming friends with Saint Therese can be so powerful,
yeah,
for the simple, mother doing the dishes or something. But
yeah,
also, that's the cool thing about Saint Therese is that she's the patron saint of missionaries, which is another
yeah,
crazy thing about her,
yeah,
because she was this little nun in closed up in a convent, and she's the patron saint
yeah.
of missionaries.
It
So
kind of shows the power of prayer. It's like
exactly,
she was like the model like prayer person, and it's just like
exactly.
that's such the key. And actually, that even like kind of maybe leads into maybe one of the last points I can make, so I can hear my kids freaking
Please,
out in there.
please
And
do.
there,
Yeah.
but is the wind build send I brought up earlier? It's like the Catholic missionary, the folks missionaries, like they're winning people over to like Jesus and everything, and they're building them up, they're sending them out. And when I got asked, what do you think it takes to be a folks missionary? I explained that all that what I explained to you guys earlier, and they're like, yeah, yeah, that's great, but you're missing one thing. I'm like, what? And it's like you first have to be one. You got to build yourself up, and you have to yourself answer the call to be sent over and over again. Like you got to be constantly being one, which means in your prayer life. So once you've answered this call,
Mm,
and you're a practicing Catholic, you should want to grow in that relationship and continue to let God win you over, and just completely fall in love with Him, because that makes the wanting to go get into like your prayer life and the lives of the saints and different books and your theology like that. That just makes that like you want to go do that now. And then when you're going to be sent, you're gonna be your cup is gonna be filled so much that it's easier to fill others.
yeah,
But you can't fill from an empty cup. So you got to always fill
yeah.
yours. Oh man, that's such a great example. And I think that's what Saint Therese did well. She filled her cup and filled her cup, and she just overflowed. Like honestly, through her diary, overflowed to like, I mean, the world.
Oh yeah. Because she uses, one point in, St. Paul's imagery of the body, right? And where she
Mhm.
asks God, "Am I the hand? Am I the foot? Am I the ear?" And she concludes, "I want to be the heart." And the heart pumps the blood to the whole body. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
just love her. Yeah.
We do. Well, we used. To, I haven't done it in a while. We used to do at the end of each episode of mine. We do the saint draft, and we go back and forth drafting saints. We're building a team of five. We're a big sports guy, like a team of our
Oh
starting
yeah. Let's.
five. That if they were alive today, they would save the world. And Saint Therese is always on people's list. Like it was so awesome. It was like
Yeah. Yeah.
it was so funny because it was like building a business. Like, okay, we need a good leader. Who would be our leader? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, jump on a second. And then like you would just be like building literally like if I was
Yeah.
gonna build like a Catholic charities of today and I could bring back all these saints to run it, who would I pick for it? It was always so much fun. People always had a lot of fun for that. So
That's a fun game.
yeah.
I'm gonna bring that to my parish. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah, it's pretty fun, especially if you get anybody that's like sports fans or something. It's pretty fun. So yeah.
Yeah. Now here, Michael's got a good comment here.
Okay.
Confrontational apologetics can have unintended consequences, like a painful vaccination. They get just enough Catholicism to become resistant and resentful if
Yeah.
delivered with a poor bedside manner. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I always so my mom, when I became Catholic, the thing my mom told me that night is, "Don't bring this Catholic crap to me." So that's how I started my journey,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I knew the one thing I needed to do was not bring that Catholic crap to her now. It's like, to use her
Yeah.
words. But what I did was I just continued to live my life. She got to now see, at the time I didn't have any kids, but she now has seen my 4 and 2-year-old grow up, and my 4-year-old will she will bring that Catholic crap to her, and she'll like, "No, no, no, Nana, Nana, we gotta pray." And it's like, "All right,
Yeah.
ready, Nana? Ready, Nana?" And name the Father, Son, and then she does the Holy Spirit backwards. But yeah, but she makes her pray before meals. I'm like, oh my gosh, if anyone's gonna make her become Catholic, it's her. But I just step back. But now what she's seen is she's met people like, oh, I go to church with your son. Like your son is great, and she loves to hear people talk like, yeah, I'm in his Bible study, or I went on an Acts retreat with him, and she gets to hear stuff, and now she's like started to take down. She put up this brick wall, and so she's starting to like kind of take him down a little bit.
Mhm.
But I could have gone the opposite. I could have just like debated her and argued with her, and I would have just been handing her bricks, and she would have just been like you know,
Yeah.
or she'd been enforcing her wall like with steel, and I would have never had a chance ever. But we
Yeah.
just kind of let it kind of slowly, naturally uh, grow. I mean, even though it's my mom, I'm still in the kind of that same thing. Like she needs to also be
Mhm.
won over to Jesus and want to live with Jesus as the center of her life, and that's kind of a
Yeah.
Catholic, Protestant, whatever, like that's a common denomination. Like no matter what you are, do you want to live with Jesus in your life? Then you can get into the topics now. It's like, oh, let's dive into his word. And you can do that with anybody. They don't necessarily have to be Catholic because then that could lead them, you could lead them into some great questions and great
Yeah.
like walk them through salvation history and walk them
Yeah.
through the gospels, and you're able to walk them through like, what do you think he meant right here when he said eat my flesh and drink my blood, and you're able to have those conversations. But now I feel like I've she's softened that wall, just kind of I think put it down, but she's ready to put it back up. So we've just been really
Mm.
nice. But I definitely understand that
Yeah.
a lot. It's they can get just enough of it and get it in the right tone or the right way that they could just become resentment of it. And it's like it doesn't
Yep.
matter if it's truth or not. They don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people have pushed back because the conversation we're having right now, I've kind of had with other friends. Some have pushed back saying, "Dom, like you should be, bringing up Christ. You need to proclaim Christ. That's like one of the commandments." And what I said is that like everyone that knows me knows
Mhm.
I'm the theology guy. Like I'm the one that doesn't stop wanting to talk about this stuff, and so
Yeah.
it's like I don't need to say anything because this is my passion. I love
Yeah.
the all this stuff, and so it's people. Usually, it becomes okay, Dom. I know you're the religious type. You're the this
Mhm.
type. What would you say about this? They
Mhm.
start the conversation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone knows I'm like this, Ratzinger guy. I like all these writers and stuff like that. So I guess what I would say is that you know, if you have to bring up Christ all the time,
Mhm.
almost like out of nowhere, it becomes very like artificial, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it shows actually that maybe you're going about it the wrong way. Like it should naturally come about. It seems to me. Sometimes for me, like it's not natural because
Mhm.
because I just want to talk about it all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But so yeah, no, I don't know. I just think that there's apathy where you don't
Mhm.
evangelize,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
then there's this really like fabricated evangelization. And then
Yeah.
there's also the critics online who criticize everyone about this who don't evangelize at all, but sit in their basement
Mhm.
eating popcorn,
Yeah.
criticizing Bishop Barron from their
Yeah.
couch,
Yeah.
like, oh, Bishop Barron didn't say this to Ben Shapiro, eating
Yeah.
popcorn, fat
Yeah.
belly, sitting on the couch in their mom's basement. Like, okay, get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that was a pet peeve of
Yeah,
mine.
no, absolutely. And I think one
Yeah.
of the to like I was big on like I role played with all my I used to be a manager of a studio fitness, and I used to do role play with my salespeople all the time. And one like kind of like an example of it I feel like would be a way to bring it up naturally and super easy within literally seconds is you meet with a friend and like, hey, how's life been going? And like if it's a good friend, like they're gonna say like, it's been good, like the wife's good, the kids are good or whatever. It's like, man, work has been crazy. I was just with a friend last night. Just work is just nuts and so much gossip and all this stuff and everything like that. And I was with my focus missionary friend too. We're all hanging out. We're all good friends. But able to like as soon as he brought that up, like that focus missionary was like, "Man, I'm so sorry to hear that." It's like, "How's your prayer life been?" And it's like, "There you go.
Mm.
Like you're right. You're into the religious talk. You're into the the faith face to talking.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like you got the conversation started. But we that got us off on a whole talk of how our prayer life been and how it's like, wow, yeah, it has actually
Wow.
been struggling. And because it's been struggling, we've seen it. Like I've been quick to anger with my kids, or I've been quick to get mad when my wife asked me to do something, even though it's like she's just
Mhm.
wanting my help and stuff like that. So yeah.
No, yeah. Awesome. Well, Josh, is there anything else about the little way that you want to sneak in? I know we're going about an hour and 10 minutes here. I'm having a blast. I could talk to you for hours, but
Yeah. So that's why
um,
I'm excited for like the roundtable stuff where it's like when one of these days when my wife's here
yeah,
and
we
I
need
don't
to do that, huh?
have
Yeah,
yeah,
we
it'd be
got to get
fun.
a bunch of guys together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like 4 or 5 of us or something, and just like round tabling it up and seeing how it goes. If anyone
yeah.
lags, it may be a little tough, but no, I
It'll
think
probably be me. Yeah,
the little way is just it is the way. It's cool. St. Therese is the same for everybody. It's like the little way is literally for everybody. Everybody's called to it, and I always think about like people being too busy. Like that's always the thing. It's like we're in a life where everyone's too busy to lead a Bible study, or too busy to like invest in people. And I think that it's like comes down to like making sure our priorities are right, but also just realizing it's like you don't have to be the Saint Francis Xavier. Your goal is not to go baptize 300,000 people in the next year, unless God leads you that route. But your goal is just to invest in those you are around you. And we're set up in a society where it's like we probably have those people around us already. Like we all, most of us, well, I'm blessed to not, but most of us work in a secular workforce. So you got people there. You got your own parish. You don't forget that there's evangelization that needs to happen there. You're going to have those
yeah,
lukewarm Catholics that you need to be able to identify and just be able to build in that
absolutely.
relationship with.
Yeah,
And then there's just and then obviously then your family and you're making sure you're also you're focusing there first. Your spouse, kids if they have kids, and um, but you get to that like if everyone we get the two. This is kind of a long explanation. Sorry, long last word.
no,
But
you're good.
is the I'm too busy, or well, I do the little a way of evangelization within my home. And I think both of them have a little bit of problems with them. Either the too busy is like you just need to make sure your priorities are right. But the only inside my home, like if we all said that and we all just focused on inside our home, there would be a whole bunch of lost souls out there. And I think that
Mhm.
that we just have to realize it's like we had that one person at work, we had two people at work that we could just walk with and just start building that relationship with. Like literally, you don't have to mention Jesus, mention anything. Um, I actually had an episode that was on the workplace evangelization, a girl that's really good at it. But if we just focus on those one or two people, I mean, I have a parish that we probably see 1,000 people a week at maybe more than that, but at least 1,000 people a week at Sunday Mass. Then if everyone just found that one person and one person a year, and you'll even say like 15% of those are actually finding someone they're joining OCIA, like you would have 150 people coming into the church every year through OCIA. But we're not seeing those numbers. We're seeing like I think we're seeing like 48 or something come in. Our cathedral is seeing
Yeah,
100, which is really cool. But uh, but I think that people don't realize is if we can get Saint Philip Neri said, give me 10 detached men, like detached from the world, worldly things and everything, focused on God, and watch us change the world. And I think that
yeah,
could really change a parish. You just find those 3 or 4 people that are willing to walk with you and are on that same mission. It doesn't take a lot of people, but if everyone's on that same mission, doing the same thing, winning people over, building them up, and then sending them out to also be disciples, a parish can change real fast. But,
oh, absolutely. Totally agree with you. Yeah,
yeah.
Michael says, "Josh, you're so genuine, super based." 100% agree. Saint Therese is a friend of mine too. She's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's great. Thanks, Michael. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and, it's always a
No, of
blast. I'm
course.
excited to continue to do stuff with you guys. Like, I think
Yeah,
even
man.
I look at the internet's a mission field, obviously, it's
Oh
a
yeah,
crazy, crazy world out there, so that's our mission at the Holy Happy Hour is just to be a light. I'm about to add so the Holy Happy Hour where it came from is the Holy Hour, obviously, so an hour of talking about holy things. But at the happy hour part, we're about to introduce. I've got just a nice bottle of tequila, some whiskey, some stuff. My goal would be to have like an aspect of making a cocktail and then enjoying like a drink, and then also having the happy hour part. So we're in development. We've only been doing this for about 7 months now, but yeah, we're over there
dude,
just trying
that's
to
awesome.
just trying to make a difference. And we're building our support right now, and just hired on a business manager, and she's really pushing the support team because as we bring in support, we just want to take the money and pour it right back into our community, help people in need. And I think that's another place where the kind of those acts of service that is really our passion. It's just being able to use this platform, this kind of stuff, and our passions to be able to like work with people from around the country to then just pour into our communities to help just people in need. Because there's a ton of people out there that need it, and I think
That's
that
fantastic.
that we can make a difference. So
No, we need more people like you, Josh, in parishes, like on fire, want to do things, want to get involved. Honestly, it just makes me so happy when I come across, like, I've, Drew the Catholic's another guy. Shout out to Drew.
yeah,
Kyle Whittington. These guys. All these people that I'm seeing here on the internet just makes me so freaking happy.
yeah,
So, welcome. I know you've been in the Catholic Church for a while, but we're so glad to have you.
yeah.
But so I will put your channel in the show notes, and guys, please check out the Holy Happy Hour. They have a bunch of videos. They have a live stream series on the 7 deadly sins and their opposite virtues, featuring me on the the greed one, which is appropriate. I'm a very greedy person. Anyway, okay. Without further ado, let's see. If you guys enjoy this stuff, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you don't want me to work at McDonald's, go ahead and support me at patreon.com/the Project. And you can find out other stuff at the ecclesiablog.com. All right, Josh, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Audience, see you guys later.